Hi and welcome to the show. Most people don't know what to do or expect when faced with a legal dispute. In this show, we bridge the gap from not knowing what to do or what to expect when dealing with that legal dispute. In the show, we address specific questions directed by its viewers via its email platform and the WhatsApp platform. Don't forget to send in your questions to the email address or WhatsApp number provided at the end of the show. I'm your host, Fazloodien Abrahams, and you're watching the Fazlaw Show on Cape Town TV. Human rights are basic human rights that everyone has, simply because they are human. They do not have to be earned, and they are not privileges which someone gives to you. These rights might be limited, but cannot be taken away. However, many times we see individuals being treated badly by others, such as government and the public, who simply ignore the rights of another. Similarly, being detained by SAPS comes with obligations and responsibilities to protect and respect the dignity of an accused. Unfair discrimination at the workplace or in employment policies are nothing new and currently is a very fine line. Companies are now requesting mandatory vaccinations and could possibly be the new battle in courts. Xenophobic attacks lead to foreigners being killed and their assets being completely destroyed. Women and children are abused daily, and at times complaints goes unanswered, leading to unnecessary deaths. How does one deal with such disputes, but more importantly, how does one avoid it, and who do you approach for help? Keep watching the show and you'll find out later. According to World Reports 2021, incidents of xenophobic violence and discrimination against non-nationals played out during the pandemic and still exist today. Xenophobic attacks, when reported, were often met with inadequate remedies and an attitude of indifference. A common insult hurled towards foreign nationals is the word kweri, a word black South Africans use as slang, which intends to be derogatory. In addition, Police Minister Bikitsele noted in that report that complaints of gender-based violence escalated during the lockdown, which saw 2,300 complaints being registered. The World Report further confirms that at least 51% of South African women who are abused is at the hands of intimate partners they have relationships with. It appears from the statistics that the violence or the violation of human rights is here to stay, and disputes are still having a negative impact on communities trying to live a good life. However, there is hope, and newly amended laws appear to be the solution, or do it. With me today is our guest expert, Mogamat Igshaan Higgins, who is an activist and attorney who has a passion for human rights. Igshaan is a legal expert who specializes in alternative dispute resolution, insolvency law, sports management, and corporate law. Igshaan has, among other, completed courses in judicial skills and leadership. Igshaan was a parliamentary lobbyist during the writing of the South African Constitution and previously served as a member of the Western Cape Rental Housing Tribunal for 7.5 years. In addition to the above, he is a radio presenter of the Legal Hour, Constitutional Matters, and the Leadership Hour of the Voice of the Cape radio station. Igshaan has a keen interest in development of community rugby, Cape Muslim and slave heritage, Cape Malay choirs, Cape minstrels, and various community upliftment projects. For leisure, he is an inspiring master chef and the founder and curator of the Cape Muslim and Slave Heritage Museum located at the Cape Castle of Grip. Igshaan, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for inviting me to your show. And of course, all greetings to your listeners and to your viewers.
So Igshaan, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm going to jump into a few questions that I want to pose to you on specific words that the viewers need to understand. So the first question is, what is an activist And what type of support or narrative do they promote?
Okay, so yeah, I've been an activist for many years. I mean, since I was at high school, and that was at the age of about 14 years. But of course, we come from a very different period. We came from a period of apartheid and, of course, of severe oppression. And I was obviously a teenager during the 1985 boycotts and riots. So, of course, that kind of shaped my thinking about what an activist is. So, to answer your question, an activist is a person who wants to change a community, a person that wants to see change, positive changes happen in the community, in your locality, and of course nationally in South Africa, and of course throughout the world. And but of course, in order to be that activist, you must, number one, have a passion for what you want to be, what you want to change. You must also be, in a leadership position, or you ought to be in a leadership position, because I mean, doesn't mean you're not in a leadership position that you can't be an activist. But in order to be an effective activist, then of course, you need to lead from the front.
Sure. So a lot of guts, a lot of confidence, and the will to stand up for other people, basically.
Exactly.
What happens when a person violates another human's right?
Yeah, of course. In South Africa, we are very fortunate that we have a constitution. And of course, our rights are entrenched in terms of Section 2 of the Constitution by way of the Bill of Rights. And of course, if your rights are violated, we have legislations and we have organizations that you can lodge your claim with in terms of your right that has been violated.
And we'll have a deeper discussion on that later.
Of course.
So now the next question is, what happens or what can one expect when government or government official violates your human rights?
The Constitution is for everyone, including for individuals, and it's also for the state and state officials and bureaucracy. So if a government official or a state official violates your constitutional rights, that particular action, administrative action, can be tested against the Constitution and, of course, laws acting for you as an individual. And if it is found that that particular government official acted unconstitutionally, then, of course, their actions can be taken on review, judicial review, into any court of law.
Thank you. That brings us to an ad break and to the end of the first segment of the show. Keep watching for more answers to your questions. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the show. In the first segment, we highlighted disputes resulting from a violation of human rights. We also looked at the statistics from the World Report 2021 and got to know our guest, legal expert, activist, and attorney, Igshaan Higgins. Then towards the end of the first segment, we had a short discussion on the legal ramifications when your human rights are violated. I'm your host, Fazloodien Abrahams, and you're watching The Fazlaw Show. I now would like to turn to the focus of the discussion into the efficacy of the current laws. In other words, how effective are these laws? I want to focus more particularly on when the law was created and what challenges it has had over the years. Before we move over to the next leg of the show, I would like our expert to explain a few words I just mentioned. Igshaan, we've spoken about the word efficacy. I mean, a lot of people might not know what it means.
I was wondering why using such a complicated and loaded word, to our viewers, but it's fine. Basically, the formal definition of efficacy is that basically to produce a desired result.
Yep.
And I think that in relation to the Constitution is that we have this beautiful Constitution lauded all over the world as one of the best constitutions of the world. But the reality is it must mean something to ordinary people out there. It's not for lawyers with fancy robes and for people, addressing judges. I think people on the street, they should understand how the Constitution could potentially work for them. Now, if you look at the Constitution, we're very fortunate to have a Bill of Rights. But there's just three values that we need to understand why there's a Constitution. Is one, to entrench human dignity, to entrench equality, and of course to entrench freedom. Because those are the three things that we as a majority of South Africans never had in this country.
And that brings me to my follow-up question. What governs human rights? You mentioned the Bill of Rights, so that's obviously the answer. But now, when was this written?
Well, there was two attempts at the Constitution. The first one was concluded in 1993, and that was what we call the interim Constitution. Then, in 1996, we had what we call the Constitution in its current form. So, and that was passed as an act of Parliament. But of course, the Constitution it's not a normal law. Like you can't just change a law by a simple majority. You need a 2/3 majority in Parliament, and you need the consent of at least 6 of the provinces in terms of the National Council of Provinces to confirm, to do any changes to the Constitution. So it's an entrenched type of law, and it's extremely difficult to change.
Now, I know that there's been a lot of amendments or some amendments to the Constitution. So the question that I want to bring up is, having to look at what's happening in the world today, or in our country specifically, in your view, what still needs to change where the Constitution is concerned, or more particularly, the Bill of Rights? Do we find that these rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights are still effective enough? And one particular one, and we'll follow up later in the show on that question, is the death penalty. But don't focus on the death penalty for me now.
I'm not going to focus on it. I was just look at your general question.
Yeah. Do you feel that there's some changes that need to take place?
Look, we've had changes to the Constitution, and it was possible to do it. And of course, the majority of the more than the majority, almost like the required majority in terms of the Constitution, consented to it, and there has been changes. There's been quite a number of changes, probably about 19 at this point in time. But more than the issue of death penalty, there's one of the things that's currently a hot sticking point in South Africa is a land issue.
Yeah.
Now, of course, one can interpret the Section 25 of the Constitution the way you want to, but it's very, very difficult to get to a point where people say that there will be land redistribution without compensation. Yeah. And that's the big issue that we're faced with at the moment. So, but I mean, as we can all see, that it can't just be done. There's a whole process attached to it. The ruling party currently, they don't have the required majority to change anything like that, even though they are the champions for that particular, what they would like to do. But the reality is there's changes required, because a constitution is not a static document. As and when the needs of this country require change, so must the constitution change. But of course, it must have the buy-in of the required majority in Parliament.
So we can confidently say that there are more changes to come if we're looking at what needs to take place in order for this constitution to be amended in order to conform.
But as I say, it's a contentious issue. I mean, I'm talking about the land issue, and of course the death penalty as well, as you mentioned. Very contentious issue, and there's no guarantee that it will change, because there's a whole lot of processes attached to changing the constitution. But the rights entrenched in the constitution, it's guaranteed, unless, of course, you have the required numbers in Parliament to change any of the provisions in the Constitution.
Igshaan, so now the individual has realized that or feel that their rights have been violated. Where do they go to from here?
Yeah, look, there's various places. I mean, the beauty about South Africa, we've got lots of organizations where you can lodge complaints, and I'll run through it quickly. You can go to the South African Human Rights Commission. You can go to the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. You can go to the Public Protector. You can go to the CCMA. Or you can go to the Commission of Gender Equality. All these organizations have been founded on a human rights culture, and it is geared towards resolving the problems of ordinary South Africans.
Okay. So these are Section 29 institutions, right? What they call
Section 9.
Section 9. Right. So Human Rights Commission, the Cultural and Linguistic Commission?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of organizations, but the ones that I've highlighted is where, you know, those like the linguistic ones, these are specialized ones. But I mean, like the main ones would probably be, like I said, the South African Human Rights Commission, the Public Protector, the CCMA if it comes to labor issues, gender equality if it comes to gender issues, and of course, police issues, Independent Police Investigative Directive.
That brings us to the end of the second segment, and keep watching for more answers to your questions, and I'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Fazloodien Abrahams, and you're watching the Fazlaw Show on Cape Town TV. Now, our first and second segment, we had a recap, but if you missed it, you always can follow up and get it back on our YouTube channel, or you can wait for the repeat of this episode during the week. We discussed many things, and I think it's important that we want to focus on the questions that you as a viewer has posed. So Igshaan Higgins with me today. Igshaan, the question that I have for you is, can I be refused emergency medical treatment if I don't have money to pay for that treatment?
Where you requesting your medical treatment. If you, of course, go to a state hospital, then, of course, there's no way they can actually refuse you medical treatment. And, of course, the cost is minimal attached to that. But if you go to a private hospital where you're supposed to pay or you don't have any medical aid, then, of course, both parties have rights. One, they have the right to be paid for their services, and you, on the other hand, you have the right to medical treatment. However, in order to balance that, at least that particular facility must stabilize you. And once you are stabilized, then they can take you to the state institution where you don't have to pay. So I think there's checks and balances in the respect of these things. You can't demand to have expensive treatment at that private facility without actually having the necessary cover. That's not a right.
So the right we're talking more is about the state institution. You go to the day hospital, or
there we go, and they can't refuse you. Because that's what's part of your rights.
Right. Next question. I was raped and fell pregnant as a result of the rape. According to the law, can I have an abortion?
I think abortion is part of the country's law, and I mean an abortion is a woman's right, and on that basis, she can, of course, go have an abortion.
I want to ask you this question, also one of the questions posed by the viewers, and it's what we discussed earlier. The death penalty has been called for to return so many times before, especially against rapists and murderers. Will it ever return, and why not, if not? And in your view, should it return?
Well, firstly, I think we come from a very difficult past. One of the oppressive mechanisms of the apartheid state was to have the death penalty against people that were fighting for their freedom. So, of course, we have it was a very bitter pill, you know. So it was a great victory when the death penalty was abolished in this country. Now, yes, we do have challenges with crime, and of course lots of people would love to see a murderer or a rapist, you know, face the ultimate penalty, which is death. However, that is something that the South African public will have to decide. I mean, at the time when the death penalty was abolished, it was needed for South Africa. However, every single constitution can be amended. However, it depends on the need of that particular society at that particular point in time. So yes, we've heard calls for the death penalty to be reintroduced, but it is still subject to what is guaranteed in the Constitution, which is basically saying that we've abolished the death penalty. Right. And should we want to revive it, they will need the required majority. Sure. Not simple majority, required majority in terms of the Constitution to change that particular provision.
Thank you. Another question. You want to finish off?
I just wanted to say, you asked my opinion, should it be changed? As an activist and as a human rights campaigner, I firmly believe that we should not reintroduce the death penalty. We should look at alternatives.
Thank you. The other day, I collected a letter from the post office, and it looked like someone opened it. I'm not sure. Can the post office open letters? That's the question that was asked by the viewer.
No, I think everybody has the right to privacy, and your privacy is also guaranteed in terms of the Constitution. And if the post office has made themselves guilty, or employees of the post office made themselves guilty, then I suggest that person goes to the probably to the Human Rights Commission to lodge a complaint that their rights has been violated by an organ of the state or as an entity of the state.
Another question posed by the viewers is, can my citizenship ever be taken away from me?
Well, it depends which citizen you are. I'm assuming that person is speaking about being a South African citizen.
Indeed.
No, if you are a South African citizen, your citizenship can't be taken away from you. Of course, if you renounce your citizenship, or if you take up a citizenship in another country, then there's laws that will actually deal with that particular aspect of it. So if the law says that you can only be a South African citizen and you must renounce your citizenship in another country, then and you refuse to do so, then of course you are subjected to that particular law.
Okay. Another question. Can one sing the song Kiss the Farmer or Kill the Farmer in this democratic dispensation?
I think currently we have a case like that at the moment. I think Malema versus the AfriForum, I think
Correct.
that case is being dealt with. So I do not on live or on TV want to pronounce my opinion on this particular thing. I think we should wait for the outcome of that decision. If I may say that we do have the freedom of expression in this country. However, every single freedom of expression is limited by the limitation clause in the Constitution. So you are not free just to do what you want to do. You need to look at what the limitations are and whether you are actually treading, whether you're actually treading on somebody else's rights.
Right.
So you have your rights, but you must also respect somebody else's rights.
Thank you. Another question. Are children allowed to work?
Well, in terms of this country, I mean, we have very strict laws, labor laws, that we do not allow child labor. And of course, there's legislation attached to those particular limitations. So in this country, we definitely do not tolerate child labor.
Okay. Let's see. All right. One more question that I want to pose to you quickly. Disability grant. Can SASSA just willy-nilly take it away from you?
No, SASSA will never willy-nilly. They're not allowed to willy-nilly take some, because it's your right to have a social grant in terms of legislation. However, there's a means test and there's criteria. And if, of course, you need to be honest in actually submitting your particular circumstances. If, however, it is found that you were fraudulent in your application, and that you do not comply with the criteria or the means test, then of course SASSA is completely within their rights to take away your disability grant.
Well, that brings us to the end of the question and answer sessions. Igshaan, you've been an amazing guest and even a better expert. Thank you for being on my show, and we hope to see you back soon.
Thank you, Fazlaw. Thank you to the viewers.
That brings us to the end of the show. My name is Fazloodien Abrahams. You're watching the Fazlaw Show on Cape Town TV. Please look out for our upcoming episodes. We will speak about various other things such as the property law, matrimonial law, divorce law, and so on. Don't forget to send in your questions to us, and we will definitely see that the expert answer these questions. You can send it to the Fazlaw Show's email. It's info@fazlaw.co.za, or our WhatsApp number 082-495-8989. I'm your host, Fazloodien Abrahams, and thank you for watching the Fazlaw Show.